I found this antique wood stove on Craigslist, and after some cleaning up, some sanding, I'm going to put it back in the back corner of the shop. Once I got it back there, I was like, okay, I need to look up the building code to make sure everything is exactly the way it should be. And the building code says that an open flame must be 18 inches off the floor. So once I got it back there, I measured the 18 inches, and you can see behind the wood stove that there's like this gray, dark gray area down low. That cinder block covered up with a layer of concrete over it. And then just above that is the white stripe. That's where the baseboard was. And just above that baseboard is the 18-inch mark off the floor. And I thought, how in the world am I going to jack up this wood stove 18 inches off the floor? And then it hit me. That's exactly what I'll do. I'll use a car jack, and I can lift one side up, and I can slide a cinder block under it and let it back down. My very first attempt, the jack twisted on me, so I decided I really need to go slow with this thing. So that's why you see me always holding the top of the wood stove as I jack it up. There's my dog Ellie. She wants to know what's going on. So I slowly jack up one side of the stove, and I slide blocks under it, and then I move around to the other side and gonna jack that side up and slide blocks under it. You can see my drill on top of the wood stove, how I have a hook in the end of it. That's just one of those wood hooks you can drive into a stud or something. You'll have a hook hanging down. Well, I put electrical tape all around the threading part of that hook and tightened it on my drill just as tight as I could get it. And that made a perfect hook to go into that jack, because I don't have the handle to that jack. And I just slowly run the jack, and it lifted the wood stove up almost with ease. Now, mind you, this thing's got to be 400 or 500 pounds. I ain't sure how heavy it is, but I just kept my hand on the top to just make sure that it didn't twist and it didn't roll off of the jack, because that thing was way too heavy to have some kind of crazy accident because I was going too fast. And so I would go around to one side and I would jack it up, slide my block under it, and then move around to the other side and slowly lift that up. Now the goal is I've got to be 5 blocks high to get that to the 18-inch mark. Now, looking back, the 18-inch mark wasn't 5 blocks high. It was probably more like 4 blocks high, because the blocks themselves were 18 inches high. I neglected to remember that there's 6 inches of leg under the wood stove, and then another, I think, 10 inches from the leg to the actual bottom of the firebox. But being 18 inches at the bottom of the legs, that would give me plenty of leadway if any inspector looked at it and had any problems with the height, because, my tape measure is different from his tape measure or whatever that is. So I gave myself plenty of leadway. You can see that twist jack I laid right there in the front. That thing was a lifesaver. I couldn't imagine trying to lift this up each side and then slide block under it being by myself. And you can see here how easy that drill made this job. It just twists the jack, and the jack lifts the side right on up. Once I get it high enough, I'm able to just take a block and slide it right into place. I dusted those blocks off to make sure there was no dirt or gravel or a pebble or anything that would be between each block, because I wanted this thing to go in smoothly and stay forever. Now, this back block here, I had to go up just a little bit further because of how tight the jack was and the back wall. So just a couple another turns, and then I can slide that back block into place. And then just once it's in place, slowly let it back down, and it was there. I mean, everything worked so smoothly on setting this. I was so happy about having the drill part, not just the jack. The jack was good to have, but figuring out I could use a drill, because I was first going to do it with a screwdriver in that hole, and that would have took forever. Now you see I got a board in my hand there. My daddy always told me you put a board or something under the jack so that it doesn't sink down. And I guess that's just ingrained into my head because I'm on concrete and I'm still using a board. So when daddy sees this, he'll be happy to know that I'm still following his instructions. Now I had to build a third column between the front and back legs so that the jack could sit on it. So every time I had to add a block or something to that middle column, I remove it when the stove is all set in place and get it out of the way. So each column is just under each leg. After this fourth set, the next day, I had my brother come over because I was trying to explain to him on the phone how this project was working. So he came over the next day and he grabbed the camera. So now I got a cameraman. The camera's not sitting in the floor. So this view here gives you a good sense of how the drill and the jack worked together, because he got a good angle here. And you can see as I slowly lift this up, and I cannot stress enough that I had to go slowly to make sure I didn't have any mishaps. You can see that the jack does slightly start to lean against the stove, and that always made me nervous, especially as this thing is getting higher and higher. And you can see I'm working with a heat lamp on me, and that's the reason I need a wood stove. That shop gets bitter cold, too cold to be in the dead of winter. So this is going to be a great addition to produce some heat in the shop and make it bearable to be out there year round, or at least through the winter months. So here I am lowering it back down. We've got all of them in place on that side. That's the 5 blocks high. And being up that high is going to make it easier to load and deal with the fire and the logs. I won't be bending over so much to fill the firebox up. Now, somebody said to me, hey, I think you're going to have a cold spot down close to the floor. And, just a simple small ceiling fan takes care of that. So I'm not really worried about, having a cold spot closer to the floor. I think the air will be stirred with a ceiling fan out there. Now you can see here that the drill does wobble, and that's another reason to go very slow and methodical, because it does have a wobble to it because it's off center. So that worked out really well, just putting these blocks in like this. And you can see here, when you put the block in, I made sure that everything was squared and tight. It was clean between each joint, because I didn't want to have any issues in the future of some kind of movement and having a gap or something under one of the legs. So this was a great idea to use this jack and drill. I highly suggest it if you got to lift something heavy. It worked out wonderful for me, and I was very pleased with that. Then across the front, you can see I built the front of the hearth, and that's 2 cinder blocks high with a capstone on top. And that cap and the top of the column that the leg sets on, they are level to each other. So that's going to turn out to be a great big hearth in the end, actually. But it turns out that putting it together like that was a really good idea. Now, you see that outlet on the wall back there? I do get rid of that outlet. I disconnect the outlet, and I put a metal cover plate over the junction box part of it. And because I am going to put a heat shield back behind the stove. That is just sheetrock back there. So you can see that up here in the picture that the hearth gets filled up with stone all the way up to the bottom of the block. And then I put a real thick 4-inch, maybe it was a little more than 4-inch concrete cap on top. Here's Caitlin caulking in the through the wall chimney connector. Then we did a test burn just to make sure we had no smoke leaks in our chimney. And then here is the shield that I put on the wall. I got some tin from Home Depot and some of those slats you use for fencing that has the dog ears on top. I just cut the dog ear part off. and I took those fence slats and I built a picture frame in the back of the wood stove on the wall. And then I sanded this tin and took the shine off of it, sprayed it down with muriatic acid, and then threw little bits of hydrogen peroxide, which created a rust effect. So here it is after the muriatic acid has aged it overnight and made it look like it was 50 years old. And then what I did was put the tin onto the picture frame part, that square that I put on the wall, but the tin isn't actually touching it. There is a gap between the tin and the wall, an air gap, so air could go under the tin, up between the wall and the tin, and come out the top. Now let's walk over here closer to the tin, and I can show you exactly what I mean by the gap. You can see here that there is a space between the tin and the wall, and you can see that shiny tin still behind it. And yes, I used a 45 caliber shell as a spacer between it. That was fun to get my shells together. And then that made a perfect backing. Thanks for watching it. I hope you enjoyed this video. Give me a like, a thumbs up, subscribe if you want to see more content like this. Thanks for watching.